At 2:47 in the afternoon, the thermometer reads 53 degrees Celsius. This is not a heat wave. This is not an anomaly. This is Tuesday in July. This is Riyadh. The air does not move. It sits heavy and still, pressing against everything it touches. The sky is not blue. It is white, bleached by a sun that feels closer here than anywhere else on Earth. Step outside, and the heat is not gradual. It does not build. It arrives all at once, like walking into a wall. Your lungs tighten. Your skin prickles. Within seconds, sweat begins to form, only to evaporate before it can cool you. This is the climate that 7 million people call home. This is the environment where one of the world's fastest growing cities is being built. And this documentary is about a question that almost nobody asks. What does it mean to build a city where humans cannot survive outdoors? Riyadh has a season that does not appear on any calendar. It begins in May and ends in September. For 5 months, the temperature rarely drops below 40 degrees. For weeks at a time, it exceeds 50. During this season, the city transforms. The streets empty. The parks sit abandoned. The sidewalks, where they exist, become corridors of silence. The outdoor cafes close their terraces. The playgrounds stand motionless, their metal slides hot enough to burn skin. Life moves indoors. It moves into shopping malls that stretch for kilometers, their corridors maintained at a precise 22 degrees. It moves into office towers where the air conditioning runs 24 hours a day, consuming electricity at rates that would bankrupt smaller nations. It moves into cars, always cars, sealed capsules of cool air that transport bodies from one climate-controlled space to another. The city does not stop functioning during these months. The economy continues. People work, shop, eat, live, but they do so in a parallel dimension. A world of artificial atmosphere separated from the outside by glass and concrete and the constant hum of compressors. The heat outside becomes theoretical. You know it exists. You see it shimmering through windows, but you do not experience it. You are protected. You are enclosed. You are, in a very real sense, no longer living in the desert at all. Riyadh was not always a city of millions. In 1950, it was a walled settlement of perhaps 50,000 people. Mud brick houses clustered around palm groves. Narrow alleyways provided shade. Life moved slowly, governed by the rhythms of heat and prayer. The people who lived here had spent generations learning to coexist with the desert. They built thick walls that absorbed heat during the day and released it at night. They constructed wind towers that caught breezes and funneled them downward. They oriented their homes to minimize sun exposure. They understood shade as a resource more valuable than gold. 10 came oil, and with oil came money. And with money came ambition. And with ambition came a transformation so rapid that it defied comprehension. Within decades, Riyadh exploded outward. The mud walls fell. Glass towers rose. The narrow alleyways gave way to 12-lane highways. The palm groves were paved over for parking lots. The city that emerged was not designed for the desert. It was designed for the car, the air conditioner, and the assumption that energy would always be cheap and abundant. Walk through central Riyadh today, and you will see buildings that could exist anywhere. Glass-curtained walls that absorb and amplify solar radiation. Dark facades that convert sunlight into heat. Massive windows that turn offices into greenhouses. Designs imported from temperate climates, from cities where the sun is a friend rather than an adversary. This is architecture that denies its context. The Kingdom Center, Riyadh's most iconic tower, is a masterpiece of engineering and design. Its distinctive aperture frames the sky. Its glass skin gleams in the sunlight. It is instantly recognizable, a symbol of the city's ambitions. It is also a building that requires enormous energy to keep habitable. The same is true throughout the city. The glass office towers of King Abdullah Financial District, the sprawling shopping complexes, the luxury hotels, each one a climate-controlled environment maintained against the constant pressure of the desert outside. The energy required is staggering. Saudi Arabia consumes more oil for domestic electricity generation than it exports to some countries. A significant portion of that consumption goes to air conditioning. In summer months, electrical demand peaks at levels that strain even the kingdom's vast generating capacity. This is the hidden cost of building in denial of climate. Every glass tower is a statement of ambition. It is also a commitment to burning fuel, today, tomorrow, and for as long as the building stands. Not everyone in Riyadh lives in air conditioning. The construction workers who build the towers often work in the open, exposed to temperatures that would be considered dangerous in any occupational health standard. They begin before dawn, racing against the rising sun. By noon, many sites fall silent, not by choice, but by necessity. Human bodies simply cannot function. The delivery drivers who crisscross the city spend hours in vehicles that become ovens when parked. The gardeners who maintain the landscaping work in conditions that test the limits of endurance. The street cleaners, the security guards, the countless workers who keep the city functioning. They experience a different Riyadh than the one visible from office windows. Saudi Arabia has implemented regulations. Work is officially prohibited during the hottest afternoon hours in summer. Employers are required to provide shade, water, rest breaks. But regulations and reality do not always align. The pressure to complete projects on schedule does not pause for heat. The economic incentives that drive workers to accept dangerous conditions do not disappear because a thermometer reaches a certain number. The gap between policy and practice can be measured in hospital admissions, in heat exhaustion cases. In bodies that break down under stress, they were never designed to endure. This is the human cost of 50 degrees. It is paid quietly, invisibly, by people whose faces never appear in the promotional videos. What is a city without public space? This question haunts urban planners around the world. Public spaces, parks, plazas, sidewalks, squares, are where civic life happens. They are where strangers encounter each other, where communities form, where the random interactions that make cities vibrant take place. Riyadh has public spaces, beautiful ones, in so many cases. The King Abdullah Park stretches across vast acreage. The diplomatic quarter features manicured gardens. Wadi Hanifa has been transformed into an ecological corridor that winds through the city. But for 5 months of the year, these spaces are largely unusable. You cannot linger in the park when the air temperature exceeds your body temperature. You cannot stroll through a plaza when the pavement radiates heat that penetrates your shoes. You cannot sit on a bench when the metal burns your skin. The result is a city where public life has migrated indoors. The shopping mall has become the de facto public square. Families gather in food courts. Teenagers socialize in corridors. Elderly men walk laps through climate-controlled atriums, getting their exercise in an environment that will not kill them. This is not necessarily bad. Malls in Riyadh are often beautifully designed, spacious, welcoming. They serve a genuine social function, but they are also private property. They have rules. They have security guards. They can decide who enters and who does not. The interactions that happen there are mediated, controlled, filtered. The spontaneous encounter, the essence of urban public life, becomes rare, and something is lost that is difficult to name. In most cities, you can choose whether to drive, you can walk, you can cycle, you can take public transit. The car is an option, sometimes a convenience, sometimes a burden, but it is not a necessity for survival. In Riyadh, during summer, the car is life support. It is the sealed environment that allows you to move from your air-conditioned home to your air-conditioned office. It is the protective shell that separates your vulnerable body from an atmosphere that wants to harm it. It is not transportation. It is survival equipment. This reality shapes everything about how the city functions. Distances are measured not in meters, but in minutes of driving. Neighborhoods are designed around parking availability. Buildings turn their backs to the street, facing inward toward lots, where vehicles cluster like animals seeking shade. The pedestrian is an afterthought. Sidewalks, where they exist, are often obstacles to be navigated rather than amenities to be enjoyed. They end abruptly. They are blocked by utility boxers, signposts, construction debris. They offer no shade, no protection, no reason to use them. Walking in Riyadh is not a leisure activity. It is an act of desperation or poverty. It is what you do when you cannot afford the sealed capsule that everyone else uses. This creates a city of profound isolation. You move through Riyadh enclosed, separated, alone. You see other cars through your windshield. You see buildings through tinted glass. But you do not see people. You do not encounter faces. The random human contact that defines urban life elsewhere simply does not happen. The city becomes a network of private bubbles, moving through hostile space. To understand Riyadh's relationship with heat, follow the electricity. The city's power plants run constantly. In summer, they run at capacity. The grid strains under demand that peaks precisely when the sun is strongest. The exact moment when solar radiation is most intense, when every air conditioner in the city is working hardest. The numbers are extraordinary. Saudi Arabia's peak electricity demand exceeds 70 gigawatts in summer. A substantial portion of this is cooling. Air conditioners in homes, offices, malls, hospitals, schools, millions of units running simultaneously, fighting the same battle against the same enemy. The kingdom burns oil to generate this electricity. It burns gas. It is building nuclear plants and solar farms to diversify. But for now, the primary fuel is hydrocarbons. This creates a paradox that would be funny if it were not so consequential. Saudi Arabia's wealth comes from selling oil to the world. But a significant portion of that oil is consumed domestically, largely to power air conditioners that make it possible to live in cities built without regard for climate. The carbon emissions from this consumption contribute to global warming. Global warming makes the heat worse. Worse heat requires more air conditioning. More air conditioning requires more energy. More energy produces more emissions. The spiral continues, and Riyadh keeps growing. Before air conditioning, people in this region understood something that modern Riyadh has forgotten. They understood shade. Traditional Arabian architecture was obsessed with it. Buildings were oriented to minimize sun exposure. Streets were narrow, creating canyons of shadow. Courtyards were internal, protected spaces where families could gather away from the brutal light. The mashrabia, the intricate wooden screens that covered windows, filtered sunlight while allowing air to flow. The walls were thick, massive, thermal batteries that moderated temperature swings. The colors were light, reflecting rather than absorbing radiation. Every element of traditional design was a response to climate. Every choice was made with the sun in mind. Walk through Old Diriyah, the original Saudi capital, and you can still see this wisdom embedded in mud and stone. The buildings huddled together, protecting each other. The passages twist and turn, never allowing direct sun penetration. The spaces feel cool even on hot days, not cold, not air-conditioned, but bearably cool. This knowledge took centuries to develop. It was abandoned in decades. The glass towers of modern Riyadh represent a different philosophy entirely. They assume that climate can be overcome through technology. They assume that energy will always be available to power the machines that make life possible. They assume that the desert can be ignored. Perhaps they are right. Perhaps technology will always stay ahead of climate. Or perhaps the old builders knew something that the new ones have forgotten. In 2024, Riyadh opened its metro system. 6 lines, 85 stations, 176 kilometers of track. One of the largest urban transit projects in the world, built from scratch in less than a decade. The stations are architectural marvels, each one designed by a different international firm, each one a statement of ambition and identity. The trains are automated, driverless, gleaming with technology. And crucially, everything is there: the platforms, the corridors, the trains themselves. A continuous climate-controlled environment that allows passengers to move from origin to destination without ever experiencing the outside air. This is the promise of the metro. Liberation from the car. For the first time in Riyadh's modern history, residents have an alternative. They can travel across the city without owning a vehicle. They can move through public space, underground public space, but public nonetheless, as pedestrians rather than drivers. The question is whether they will. Decades of car-centric development have created habits, expectations, infrastructure. The city is built for automobiles. Homes are located assuming car access. Jobs are distributed assuming car mobility. Changing these patterns requires more than building train lines. It requires reimagining how the city works. The metro is a beginning. Whether it is also a turning point remains to be seen. Consider a child born in Riyadh in 2010. This child is now 15 years old. They have spent their entire life in a city where walking outside during summer is not just unpleasant, but potentially dangerous. What has this taught them? They have learned that the outdoors is hostile territory, to be crossed quickly between air-conditioned spaces. They have learned that nature is something viewed through windows, experienced in controlled doses, avoided when it becomes uncomfortable. They have learned that comfort is the default state, that temperature is something managed by machines. They have never walked to school. The concept would seem bizarre, even dangerous. They have never played outside in summer. Not for hours. Not until exhaustion. Not in the way that children in temperate climates take for granted. Their relationship with their own environment is fundamentally different from any previous generation of humans. This is not a criticism. It is an observation. We do not know what this means. We do not know how this shapes psychology, community, physical health, connection to place. We are running an experiment without a hypothesis, raising a generation in conditions that have never existed before. The children of Riyadh are pioneers. They just do not know it yet. Before Riyadh was a city of millions, it was an oasis. The name itself, Riyadh, means gardens. The plural of Rada, referring to the lush vegetation that once characterized this place. Date palms, vegetable plots, underground water that surfaced in springs and wells. For centuries, this oasis supported human settlement in the heart of the Arabian Peninsula. It was a point of life in an ocean of sand, a green interruption in the brown infinity of the desert. The water came from aquifers, ancient water, accumulated over millennia, stored in geological formations, deep beneath the surface. The people who lived here drew what they needed, and the aquifers recharged slowly, and the balance held. Then the city grew. 7 million people need water. They need water for drinking, for washing, for cooking. They need water for industry, for construction, for the swimming pools of luxury hotels. They need water for landscaping, for the green spaces that provide psychological relief from the brown desert. The aquifers could not keep up. Today, Riyadh's water comes primarily from desalination plants on the Gulf Coast. Hundreds of kilometers away, seawater is converted to fresh water through energy-intensive processes, then pumped across the desert to the thirsty capital. The energy required is enormous. The cost is enormous. The infrastructure is a marvel of engineering and a testament to what becomes necessary when natural systems are overwhelmed. The oasis that gave Riyadh its name is now a memory. The gardens remain only in the word. Climate scientists have modeled what is coming. The news is not good. By 2050, temperatures in the Gulf region are projected to rise by 2 to 3 degrees Celsius above current averages. By 2100, the increase could be 4 to 6 degrees. These numbers sound small. They are not. A city where summer temperatures already reach 53 degrees cannot easily absorb another 4. The human body has limits. Above certain thresholds, even healthy adults in shade with unlimited water cannot survive indefinitely. The combination of heat and humidity becomes lethal. Studies have suggested that parts of the Gulf may become uninhabitable during summer months by the end of this century. Not uncomfortable, not challenging, uninhabitable. Riyadh is inland, which provides some protection from the humidity that makes coastal areas more dangerous. But it also means less moderating influence from the sea. The temperature swings are more extreme. The peaks are higher. How do you plan a city for a climate that is changing faster than buildings can be rebuilt? How do you invest in infrastructure that assumes stability when stability is no longer guaranteed? These questions do not have easy answers. They're being asked by some planners, some scientists, some officials, but they are being asked quietly, in technical documents and academic papers. While the construction cranes keep swinging and the towers keep rising, Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 includes ambitious environmental goals. Millions of trees to be planted, renewable energy to be scaled up, emissions to be reduced. A greener, more sustainable kingdom, emerging from the oil economy of the past. In Riyadh, This translates into projects like the Green Riyadh Initiative, a plan to plant 7.5 million trees across the city, quadrupling the green space per capita. Trees provide shade. They reduce surface temperatures through evapotranspiration. They make streets walkable that would otherwise be unbearable. They transform hostile public spaces into places where people might actually want to spend time. The ambition is genuine. The investment is real. The trees are being planted. But trees need water, and water in Riyadh is already a constrained resource, imported at great cost from distant coasts. Every tree planted is a commitment to irrigation, maintenance, and long-term resource allocation. The math is complicated. Trees reduce cooling demand by shading buildings, but they increase water demand for irrigation. Desalination provides the water. Desalination requires energy. Energy produces emissions. Emissions warm the climate. A warmer climate requires more cooling and more water. Nothing in the desert is simple. Every solution creates new problems. Every intervention has costs that ripple outward in ways that are difficult to predict. Drive through Riyadh's outskirts at 4:30 in the morning, and you will see them. Trucks gathering in parking lots. Men climbing into open beds. The movement of labor toward construction sites scattered across the expanding city. They start before sunrise because the math of survival demands it. In the darkness, before dawn, temperatures drop to their lowest point, still warm by most standards, but survivable, workable. The hours between 5 and 10 are the productive window, the time when human bodies can function at something close to normal capacity in the open air. By 11, the heat becomes oppressive. By noon, it becomes dangerous. The workers retreat to whatever shade is available. They drink water. They wait. Some sites shut down entirely. Others push forward with reduced crews, rotating workers through brief exposures, managing heat stress like a military operation. In the afternoon, another window sometimes opens. As the sun descends, temperatures begin to drop. The hours after 4 become workable again, and the labor resumes until darkness falls. This is the rhythm of construction in Riyadh. Not a continuous process, but a fragmented one, structured around the movement of the sun and the limitations of human physiology. Every building in the city was built this way. Every tower, every mall, every highway, constructed in the margins of the day, in the hours when heat permits. Sociologists have begun studying what they call the indoor generation. These are children who grow up spending the vast majority of their time inside buildings. In temperate climates, the concern is screen time, parental anxiety, the loss of outdoor play. In extreme climates like Riyadh's, the indoor generation is not a choice, but a necessity. The effects are still being understood. Vitamin D deficiency is common among residents of the Gulf, despite living under one of the most intense suns on Earth. The sun is so dangerous that people avoid it, and the avoidance creates its own health problems. Physical activity patterns differ from global norms. When outdoor exercise is impossible for months at a time, fitness depends on access to gyms, indoor facilities, spaces that cost money and require transportation. The psychological effects are harder to measure, but no less real. Humans evolved outdoors. Our circadian rhythms, our mental health, our sense of connection to the world. All of these developed in relationship with sun, wind, sky, and open space. What happens when these connections are severed for extended periods? Riyadh is finding out. The city is an experiment in indoor living conducted at massive scale, with millions of subjects and no control group. Let us be honest about what shopping malls mean in Riyadh. In other contexts, malls are criticized as temples of consumerism, as sterile environments that drain vitality from city centers, as symptoms of suburban sprawl and car dependence. In Riyadh, malls are survival infrastructure. They are the spaces where public life happens when public space is uninhabitable. They are the commons of a city that has no outdoor commons for half the year. They are parks, plazas, and promenades, compressed into climate-controlled boxers, and they have evolved accordingly. The malls of Riyadh are not merely shopping centers. They contain entertainment complexes, restaurants, medical clinics, fitness centers, event spaces. They host community gatherings, cultural activities, social services. They are miniature cities, complete ecosystems enclosed under single roofs. Families spend entire days in malls, not shopping, just being, using the space the way previous generations used village squares and urban parks. This is adaptation. It is not the adaptation that urban theorists imagined. It is not beautiful or idealistic or aligned with visions of sustainable cities, but it is real, and it works, and it meets human needs that cannot be met any other way. The mall is Riyadh's answer to 50 degrees. Judge it if you wish, but understand what it solves before you condemn it. Behind every comfortable moment in Riyadh stands an army of invisible workers. The engineers who design HVAC systems capable of handling extreme heat loads. The technicians who maintain millions of air conditioning units across the city. The electricians who keep the grid functioning under crushing summer demand. The logistics professionals who ensure that spared parts and refrigerants arrive where they are needed. This is a city that runs on cold air, and cold air does not create itself. The sophistication required is easy to overlook. Cooling a building in Riyadh is not the same as cooling a building in London or Tokyo. The temperature differential is greater. The energy loads are higher. The equipment runs harder, wears faster, fails more often. The engineering has evolved to meet these challenges. District cooling systems serve entire neighborhoods from centralized plants, achieving efficiencies impossible with individual units. Building management systems optimize temperature, zone by zone, minute by minute, balancing comfort against consumption. Thermal storage allows energy to be captured at night, when demand is lower, and released during peak afternoon hours. These are not glamorous innovations. They do not appear in architectural magazines or design awards, but they are what makes the city possible. Without the engineers of cool, Riyadh would be uninhabitable. In some desert climates, nights provide respite. The temperature drops dramatically after sunset. The air cools. Sleep becomes possible. The body recovers from the stress of the day. Riyadh's summers offer less relief than you might expect. The urban heat island affects the tendency of cities to trap heat in their concrete and asphalt, keeps temperatures elevated through the night. Buildings release the energy they absorb during the day. Pavement radiates warmth. The air conditioning exhausts from millions of units pump heat into the atmosphere. Summer nights in Riyadh often remain above 35 degrees, sometimes above 40. This matters for human health. Sleep is when bodies recover. Prolonged exposure to high temperatures, even during rest, accumulates stress. The lack of overnight cooling means that each day begins with a deficit, a body that never fully recovered from the day before. For those with air conditioning, this is manageable. The bedroom is cool. Sleep comes. For those without, for workers in inadequate housing, for the poor and the marginalized, the nights offer no escape, and the heat accumulates. Here is something that planners rarely discuss. What does it mean to belong to a place you cannot inhabit? Riyadh is home to millions of people. They were born here, raised here, built their lives here. Their memories are here. Their families are here. Their identities are intertwined with this city. But for significant portions of the year, they cannot experience their home directly. They cannot walk its streets. They cannot gather in its public spaces. They cannot feel its air on their skin without risking harm. Their relationship with place is mediated by machines. This is not unique to Riyadh. People in extreme cold climates face similar challenges, but the Gulf situation is unusual in its intensity and these cities grew to their current scale within living memory. The mismatch between human presence and natural environment is historically unprecedented. Does this affect how people feel about their city? Does it change what home means when home can only be experienced through technological intermediation? These are questions without clear answers, but they are questions worth asking. The heat is not going away. If anything, it will intensify. Climate models agree on this, if they agree on nothing else. The Gulf will get hotter. The number of days above 50 degrees will increase. The margins within which outdoor life is possible will shrink. Riyadh will have to adapt. Some adaptations are already visible. The metro, moving life underground. The green initiatives, deploying shade as infrastructure. The building codes, slowly beginning to account for climate. The district cooling systems, achieving efficiencies that individual units cannot match. Other adaptations have not yet been imagined. Perhaps buildings will be oriented differently, designed from the ground up for extreme heat, rather than modified from temperate templates. Perhaps work schedules will shift permanently, abandoning the daytime hours that other cities take for granted. Perhaps new technologies will emerge: better cooling, better materials, better ways of generating the energy that makes survival possible. Or perhaps the adaptations will be more fundamental. Perhaps the very idea of what a city is will need to change in environments this extreme. Perhaps the assumptions that have guided urban development for centuries, assumptions born in temperate climates, in places where humans can survive outdoors year-round, will prove inadequate. Riyadh is discovering the limits of those assumptions. What comes next is unwritten. There is a time of day in Riyadh that has its own character. Noon in July. The sun is directly overhead. Shadows shrink to nothing. The light is so intense it seems to have weight. The air shimmers. The asphalt softens. Step outside at this hour, and you will find yourself alone. The streets are empty. The sidewalks are abandoned. The parks are deserted. Even inside cars, people move quickly, minimizing exposure, racing from one cool space to another. This silence is not peaceful. It is not the contemplative quiet of a forest or a library. It is the silence of surrender, of retreat, of an environment that has won. Human beings built this city. They poured concrete and raised steel and claimed this patch of desert for civilization. But at noon in July, the desert reasserts itself. It reminds the city who was here first. The buildings stand. The machines hum. The infrastructure functions. But the people hide, and the sun rules alone. Riyadh is not a failure. Let this be clear. Let this be clear. A city of 7 million people, functioning and growing, providing lives and livelihoods in one of the harshest climates on Earth. This is an achievement. It is an achievement of engineering, of investment, of human determination to live where nature did not intend. But Riyadh is also a question. It asks us what we are willing to do to maintain our presence in hostile environments. It asks us how much energy we are willing to consume, how much infrastructure we are willing to build, how much of our lives we are willing to spend indoors. It asks us whether the cities we build should adapt to their climates or defy them. And it asks us urgently, as temperatures rise and climate changes, whether the models we have developed in temperate places can survive translation to extreme ones. 50 degrees Celsius is not a problem to be solved. It is a condition to be reckoned with. A reality that cannot be engineered away. A fact of physics that shapes everything about how life can be lived. Riyadh has found answers. Temporary answers. Expensive answers. Energy-intensive answers. Answers that work. For now. for those who can afford them. But the heat remains, and the question of how humans will live in a warming world, whether in Riyadh or in the countless other places that will face similar challenges in the decades to come, remains open. The city shimmers in the noon light, the air conditioners hum, and somewhere, in the silence between the buildings, the desert waits.